Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship, MILE.
So go ahead, sir. The floor is all yours.
Okay, welcome everybody, and apologise for the delay. I'm not sure what happened, but I've been desperately trying to speak to you all. Thank you for this evening and tuning in, and what we're going to be talking about this evening is the authenticity issue and increasing your level of impact, influence and income. So what I'm going to do is just give you a little bit of information around my journey, and that way you'll be able to understand a little bit about the background that I bring to this presentation. So I graduated in 1982, which is quite a few years ago now, and I have actually done some extra study in that period, but I basically graduated as a high performance coach, and my role was fundamentally to work with high performance athletes at the Australian and Victorian state level, and with some national athletes, while managing a fitness centre and a team of about 65 people initially. I started working after that period of time with executives in health stress tests, and what that revealed to me was the ability to be able to get into the mindset of executives around their health, and also what drove them to become masters in their area, and what their motivation was to be involved in that work, and how they chose to lead others, because I started to notice that there were quite a few similarities between athletes at high levels that I'd been working with and also the executives in some of these big multinational firms that I was starting to do stress tests with. And I remember one day there was an amazing experience I had with a particular executive who was completing a stress test. And if any of you have never had a stress test, I'll explain a little bit about what happens. You usually go on a treadmill with a doctor and an exercise physiologist, and what we do is, back in those days, you would be wired up so that we would be able to watch you analyse your oxygen as well as your heart rate response. And we had a guy on this treadmill, and normally a treadmill test will go for 15 to 18 minutes. And this particular individual started walking, and after about 3 minutes we had to stop the test because his ECG was quite erratic and very unstable, and actually indicated a significant risk of a cardiac incident. And so we stopped the test and sat the fellow down and explained to him that he really needed to do something quite urgently about his health. And he looked at us both and said, "I don't have time for this, I have to run my company." And we wanted to explain to him that if he didn't take the time out to do something about this, he may not in fact have a company, nor may he have his life. And it was at that point that I started to realise that some people can actually be so consumed with a business and a vision that they fail to understand and look after the very individual who drives that vision. Because with all great leaders, the thing that differentiates leaders from managers is, in my opinion, their ability to have a vision. And so that was an epiphany moment for me, where I started to realise that there was something that needed to happen in that space. And I set up an executive health consultancy called the Health Construction Company about 15 years ago in a recession. And it just goes to show that even whatever the economic environment at the time, if you have a driving ambition, you think there's something that needs to be addressed, and in my case it was about self-leadership as well as just leadership in general. You can start and set a concept up. This was about helping people to start to become aware, especially executives and business leaders, of how authentic they had to be in the space to be able to do the job with real skill. over that period of time, I travelled nationally and internationally as a conference speaker for health, sport and the fitness industry. And since that time, I've done the same sort of work, but in the leadership and team dynamics industry as well. And in Melbourne, I had a guest radio slot with a particular channel that I worked with for years on health, lifestyle and high performance, and there were quite a few other radio programs that I presented on in that time. And that's a little bit about my professional journey. From that point on, I've actually been doing extra work in executive coaching, currently applying for my graduate diploma in executive coaching and organisational coaching, as well as applying for a master's in that space. So I started the Life and Business Leadership Institute in 2000, which is the current business that I'm involved in and the one that I'm director of at this point. And our work is fundamentally in the executive coaching and leadership space, hence my involvement with the Mile Institute. And here I am today as a potentialist, a speaker, author, coach and facilitator. So let's have a look at what I'm going to be doing over this evening in our webinar. Here's a little bit of what I've done in the space of my business to this point. Been employed for 25 years and began our business in a recession. I currently advise CEOs and MDs of small to medium businesses between $1 to $100 million turnover on how to have greater success in life and business, and in actuality to be more authentic. I have worked and still do with one of Australia's wealthiest businessmen, a multi-billionaire, and I've had the pleasure of working with him for 13 years in the area of leadership mastery and also authenticity, especially around the space of how to maintain his wealth as well as develop an interest in other areas and other business concepts that he's interested in. And finally, I've built several business ventures from new concepts to multi-million-dollar turnovers. And I also consult to a variety of companies and small to medium enterprises across a breadth of different sectors. So let's have a look at what I think are the crucial steps to be able to increase your level of impact, influence and income in 7 simple steps. First of all, we're going to talk about something called the performance model, which I'll give you some information in very shortly. Step 2 is understanding the power of systems in your life and in your business. Step 3, we're going to talk about the first component of high performance physical rituals. Step 4 is high performance emotional rituals. Step 5 will be a discussion around high performance behavioural rituals. Step 6, we talk about the same thing in a spiritual realm, and you can relax there. It's actually a dimension that's very, very straightforward, simple, and not abstract at all. And finally, step 7 is we just have a quick discussion around what your barriers to success may be at this current point in time. So let's firstly have a look at a performance model. So one of the strongest leadership coaching models that I've been exposed to is this particular concept here of performance equals potential minus interference. And what that simply means, from my perspective as an executive coach and an exercise physiologist, is that your performance, your day-to-day performance actually can equal your potential. And the only thing that detracts from those 2 states is the level of interference that you experience. So the concept is that to be genuinely authentic and to have a degree of leadership mastery, you must also be aware of where your interferences sit. And an interference is anything that detracts from your ability to perform at a high level or an elite level. I'll give you an example. An example for a business person may be that they have a set of worrying sales figures that are not at the level they should be, and so the business leader starts to worry and give more mental energy to the reason as to why they may not be where they should be. And whilst that's a valuable thing to do to fix the problem, it also represents an interference. Another example for people to get an insight into this would be if you were a sports person, or even, let's say, a golfer, and you're on one of the tees and you're ready to hit the ball and there's a water hazard. And by water hazard, of course, it's a body of water, a lake or a stream, and while you're on the tee you start focusing on, what if I hit it into the water? Or even more specifically, I don't want to hit the ball into the water. And the problem is, for those of you who understand any form of psychology, is that it's that type of thinking that starts to then direct behaviours. So because you're thinking you don't want to hit it into the water, what tends to happen is that's exactly where the ball goes. And that's also classified as an interference. So the best way of explaining the interference concept is that it's anything that detracts from your ability to be clear-minded and present to whatever task or state you are in.
Hi, Richard.
We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail.
Richard, if I may interrupt, apparently the audience is only seeing the first slide, so I believe we are stuck somewhere. So let me try to interrupt you for just a minute. I will take back the presentation rights and I will switch it back to you, so I think it will work fine. So let us try this. Let us hold on for a second. My apologies to attendees again for this interruption. Go ahead.
Okay, so thank you, Ali. So yes, I'm trusting that everybody, despite not having the screen in front of them, could understand that description and that explanation around the importance of this particular model. So I'll just reiterate to you that as business leaders, if you can start to recognise where the interferences are in your day-to-day existence and in your day-to-day business activity, you can then establish what strategy you might need to put in place to get that right. And what I'm about to do now is to give you a little bit more of an insight into a concept that I call the power of systems. Now, this is the second step, and there's a little model that I'm about to share with you now, which I hope you've actually got. And what this model is actually telling us is that everything in the universe is a system. And whilst that might sound like a very basic statement, I'll explain it to you in a bit more detail now. An example might be if you're standing in front of your computer now or sitting and listening to this, your computer is a system. And if the computer is working effectively, which it seems tonight we might have had a few hiccups with it, but if your computer is working effectively, it's a system that you can depend on. So if you look to the left of the screen there, a particularly good system is going to give you a happy face, which is going to give you a sense of control. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a poor system is an unhappy face, and that will give you a sense of being out of control. And there's a little bubble that comes off the top of the system's circle at the top, which actually relates to behaviours. And it's just to reinforce to us that human behaviours are also systems. And so any particular behaviour that you have which does not function as an effective system is actually an interference. And of course, as you now know, any interference is going to detract from your performance and your potential, and as a result of that make you a less effective leader. And also a less authentic individual. And one of the things I think is really powerful in leadership is to be able to be acknowledged as an authentic leader. It's unusual. I guess that's probably the wrong term. It's less common than I would like it to be. And I think in most cultures, somebody who is authentic in the leadership space, who walks the talk, who is the genuine article, for want of a better term, is somebody that a lot of people, or people like to have that person's input. They like to have that person's leadership guidance, and that's the sort of thing we're talking about here. If we go back to that little diagram on the left of the screen, you'll see that both of those arrows lead to a box underneath which is called control. And what that simply means is that when we're in control, we then have a much more powerful and effective impact on the teams that make up our life. So in a business, you'll have a sales team, you'll have a marketing team, you'll have an administrative team, you'll have an executive team, and the leader's ability to stay in control and be authentic has massive impact on the other teams that make up their business world. And on the same hand, outside of business, which is also leadership, in fact, as I alluded to at the start, our business is called the Life and Business Leadership Institute, because we actually believe that the skills that you need for being successful in life are exactly the same skills as is required for being successful in business. The emotional, the soft skills are very, very similar. There may be some different technical skills that you'll use in business which you may not use outside, but the emotional self-leadership skills are the same. And of course, the strength of the teams in your life actually have a massive impact on your success. So the stronger your business teams that you have around you, the more likely it is that your business will be successful. And on the other side of the coin, the stronger the teams you have in life will also support your success in that realm as well. And fundamentally, they're just two types of systems, those that work and those that don't. And you want to really be in touch with the ones that do. So we'll talk a little bit about how your emotional system can talk to you and give you feedback about what is the right system and what is not the right system for you. So I'm now going to talk to you a little bit about what I classify as high-performance physical rituals, which are the sorts of things that I would encourage everybody on the webinar to be compliant with, to be very, very structured around, and to ensure that they make enough time in their busy schedules to be able to be authentic in this space, because being authentic physically will mean that you will have the energy and the ability to minimize interferences in this realm. And it's one of the things that has I've become particularly aware of is in the leadership in business space, how many people are physically unfit to lead because they're not actually physically well enough to lead themselves. And you will see people like this, you know. They're not in good physical shape. They're not healthy. They're not fit. They're overweight. They eat the wrong sort of food, and as a result, they struggle to be genuinely authentic. And the more research we're finding about the impact of nutrition and regular activity and meditation and reflection periods in a business leader's life, you're starting to get a sense and an understanding that these things are really important and should never be overlooked. So let's have a look at some of them. The first thing I'd like to bring your attention to is there was a Harvard Business Review in January 2001, and there were two authors, a fellow by the name of Schwartz and Law, and both of these gentlemen actually had similar backgrounds to me, and they worked as NFL high performance coaches in the National Football League in the United States. What they started to observe is exactly what I saw over here, and that was that leaders, really authentic leaders in sport, have a lot of these rituals. And once I transitioned across into the business world, I started to see that the authentic leaders in business also had a particularly strong command of these types of rituals. So it was great to actually have something like the Harvard Business Review conclude that the rituals of athletes actually have a role to play in the rituals of being successful in business and being an effective leader. And they also found that the leaders that they worked with in business, because they also moved from being involved in the NFL to being involved in business, and they saw exactly the same sort of trend, which I thought was very heartening. So the question I'd ask you all is, have you ever woken up tired with no energy and a recurring feeling that you're not in the game? And I'd be very surprised if there's anyone on the webinar who actually hasn't had this experience. Now for me, when I wake up in that state, it's actually telling me something that I'm not managing properly. So I've got a system that's not working effectively. These first physical rituals are designed to give you the positive experience of actually being able to master that sort of feeling that when you wake up in the morning you're ready to go. And then we'll also talk about the emotional system and the behaviours that are involved there. You'll be also able to recognise what you need to do in that space that will help you become a high-level performer every single day. And simply, when people are bothered by multiple interferences, it's not difficult for a person to start to feel as if they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders and they don't know how to make clear, decisive decisions, and things aren't working well for them. So it's actually within your power, and it's within your own interest to learn how to be authentic with these rituals and make sure they're a part of your day. So let's have a look at what they are. The first principle I'm going to talk about is the thing that I call the FIT principle, and the little heart icon there gives you a bit of an indication that we're talking about activity. And right at the moment in the Western world, the guidelines are particularly clear. About 10 years ago, in fact probably a bit further, 20 years ago, the guideline was to have 3 days of activity a week for 20 minutes each. And what we now know is that the prescription for activity has increased from 3 days in the Western world to 7 days, because people are just not getting anywhere near the amount of activity that they need. So that's the first part about this principle, that the F relates to the frequency of activity. I talks about the intensity of activity, and so there's a thing called the Borg scale of perceived exertion, and what I encourage everyone on the webinar to do is get comfortable in being able to rate your level of exertion on a day-to-day basis when you're doing activity. I mean, 1 out of 10 simply means that you are doing a very, very light exercise session, and 10 is talking about an exercise session that's actually too intense. But the intensity of activity is important with exercise, because it gives your body the opportunity to change and manage different types of stimuluses, which is like what happens in business. You know, when you're under different forms of stress, you're going to get higher levels of distress, you're going to get lower levels of distress, and your ability to be physically active minimises the build-up of negative stress hormones in your system, which have such a deleterious impact on your health, and also become one of those classic interferences that we really need to learn to work without. You should be devoting about 30 minutes a day to doing activity, and that's as simply put as I can make it. And I feel somewhat hypocritical right at this point, because today I've actually not been able to do any activity. I simply haven't valued it enough to do it, and I've been very, very busy. And that's unusual for me, because usually I will have at least about 60 to 75 to sometimes 90 minutes a day that I set aside for doing my activity to make sure that I'm being the most authentic individual. So when I miss a day, it actually doesn't sit well with me, and I feel at the moment that I've got a slight interference, which is the fact that I haven't done my activity. The type of activity is important as well, which is simply, let's vary it around. So walking, jogging, cycling, swimming. Give your body the opportunity to experience all sorts of different activities so that it remains flexible and adaptable. The second principle we're going to talk about in the 5 physical rituals is a concept that I call Crunch 7, and you can see by this little diagram up here with the fruit and vegetables, it's got to do with nutrition. And what I thought I'd do here is I wanted to come up with 7 simple steps that people could use to become healthy, mentally clear, and have very nimble, agile brains, so that they thought effectively, were able to be creative and adaptable in the way they think. And there's an enormous amount of research to suggest now that nutrition has a massive role to play. So I came up with these 7 points, and these 7 points are: how can you be happy and healthy and mentally alert and live for a long time productively on simply nutritional concepts alone? So let's have a talk about some of these. The first one is to ensure that you have 5 serves of vegetable and 2 serves of fruit daily. Now, if I ask anybody as to why I've got that at number 1, I'm hoping that you might be able to realise that that's where all of the micronutrients and vitamins and minerals sit in most of our diets. And it's, in the Western world, it's a sad state of affairs. Very few people get that amount of vegetable serves and fruit serves daily. The exciting news, or the encouraging news, is that's gradually changing. But that's why it's important to get these 5 plus 2, which is the 7, because, as I said before, they're your multivitamin and mineral tablets in a pure form every day. To become a high-level performer and authentic, get into the habit of eating something every 3 hours. And the reason this is important is because it keeps your brain blood glucose nice and steady. And if any of you on this particular webinar know much about the human brain, you'll realise that it runs on glucose. And what that simply means is, when your brain is low in glucose, then you'll start to get interferences. And those interferences are an inability to stay awake, you'll get tired, you won't be able to think as clearly, you might have some mood fluctuations. So the objective here is to keep your blood glucose levels nice and steady by eating something every 3 hours. It's pretty simple. And it changes our eating style from actually having big meals to small, regular meals, which keeps our system operating at a fast, even pace. Obviously, you want to be going for natural and unprocessed food as much as possible, because if not, the chances are you won't be getting the vitamins and minerals that you need. And if that's the case, I would encourage everybody on the webinar to really think about what supplementation should I take. You know, should I take a multivitamin or a multimineral if I can't, or if I struggle to achieve these particular guidelines with respect to nutrition? The next one would be, let's start changing our portion sizes relative to age and activity levels. So, quite simply, you know, as I become older in my life and I move past age 30, 35, 40, my metabolic rate starts to decrease. That simply means the amount of energy that I burn at rest starts to change. And the challenge we have is as people age and as you become more professional in your career, of course, that's going to relate to experience. And so as you get older and have more experience, the chances are that you won't be, your metabolic rate will be lower. And so you don't need to eat as much. And unless you are really vigilant, your activity level may also start to decrease, which is normal as we get a bit older. But if you want to be a vital, dynamic, authentic leader, you really should keep your food intake relative to your age and to your activity levels. And what that means is if I'm at age 50, I actually probably could be eating something like close to 40% of the amount of food I was eating at age 15, 16 in my early years. I mean, that's how much of a difference. But as you see people go through their life, they tend to, in my opinion, not make that adjustment, which means that they can then start to carry excessive weight. And of course, if you're leading a group of people, quite frankly, if you're not looking after yourself and you look unhealthy, it's not giving them the right impression. And if you think to yourself, well, it's not really about how I look and how healthy I am, it's what I say. Well, in Australia at least, your authenticity actually comes down to how well you manage yourself, period, and that includes everything. So it's actually a big expectation as a leader that you are putting out there in front of a group of people. Ensure that you have a wholesome, balanced breakfast every day, quite simply to kick-start the fast after you've slept. And remember, in the morning when you need to be switched on, smart and alert, your brain will require that glucose, and if you haven't had anything to eat, then where is it going to come from? So please, if you're not in the habit of eating a wholesome, balanced breakfast every day, start eating something. Have a juice, have some fruit, but get it into the system so your blood glucose levels can rise a little bit and give your brain something to work with. And of course, be very careful of how much salt, sugar, alcohol, trans and saturated fats you eat. The trans fats and the saturated fats are the really dangerous ones. The monounsaturated fats that you'll find in olive oil, that you find with most nuts, they're very healthy, and you should look to consume those most of the time. The others have been well documented for many years as having an impact on health. It's just a question of how much you have, and you may have already heard that very powerful and simple statement, which is everything in moderation with respect to food is useful. And that's very much the case. If you can use that as an adage, you'll do very, very well. And probably the final little thing here that we can talk about is just make sure you eat a variety of foods from different food groups. And I actually talk about that from a colour perspective. So every day, endeavour to get some green vegetables, some red vegetables, some orange or yellow vegetables. The same with fruit. You know, if you're eating the same types of foods, it's very hard for your system to get the variety of nutrients that it requires to run your brain effectively. You know, your brain generates millions and millions of biochemical, in fact billions of biochemical reactions every day. And those biochemical reactions are driven by the micronutrients that your foods supply. And so if your foods are not healthy and they're not clean and they've been tampered with and overly processed, they have lots of additives, they're the sort of things that you're putting into your system and asking your brain to process from, which is a pretty tall order. Okay, so let's have a talk now about water and fluid. And you may be noticing every so often that there's a pause in me speaking. Well, it's actually when I drink my fluid. So one of the things that you have to be particularly aware of is that the brain operates at around about 83% water. And so if you are dehydrated as a leader, then your ability to communicate and to think quickly is going to be compromised. So I'm going to give you a very quick little formula that you can use to make sure that you're getting enough water in on a daily basis. So it's quite simple. It's your weight in kilograms, and you multiply that point by 0.02. And that'll give you a figure in litres that you should look to drink on a daily basis. If you're an athlete, that can change, but I'm dealing with you in the business leadership space, and so we're only going to be talking about that figure of 0.02. Please ensure, though, that your water is clean and that you're taking it from a filtered source, ideally. It's pretty straightforward. The other thing you have to do with water, of course, is to make sure that you sip it throughout the day, so that it's something that you get into the habit of. And my suggestion would be for the authentic leaders out there to start having a water bottle or a jug of water on your desk, and to set yourself a target and a goal to sip that throughout the day. Have it in your meetings, have it in your discussions, and let people see that you're actually making sure that you're hydrated. It's probably one of my favourite of all. This is the concept of respiration and meditation. And I would suggest to you that all authentic leaders take time every day to reflect and meditate on your purpose and on your progress. And it was only today I was emceeing a conference in the city, and I heard someone come up with a really nice little acronym. Or in fact, they gave a theory around this, and I converted it into an acronym. And the acronym was RAP, and it stood for reflect, appreciate, and get things into perspective. And I think really authentic leaders take the time every day to sit and think about what they did well, first and foremost, what they could improve, and also set aside time just to be mindful. And the concept of mindfulness is really quite simple. It's really about your ability to be in the present moment. And if you think about your ability to be an authentic leader, it's really strongly linked to how powerfully you are anchored to the moment and how minimal interference there is when you can live in the moment day to day. If you think about it, where most of us are focused on multitasking, when in actual fact what we should be really doing is just being immersed in a task and giving it all of our focus at that time and then moving to another. And that will help you enormously and minimize your interferences very, very substantially. Here's one of the favourites. In fact, in Australia, at this point in time, it's about 10 minutes to 12 o'clock. So I thought what I'd do is have a small sleep, a power nap as I call it, before I logged in here. And so I'm going to give you a thing called the 5 Zs of sleeping. And these are 5 steps to ensure that you can have a sound sleep every night. And any authentic leader knows the power of sleep. So the steps are, first of all, make a list of everything you have to do so that you can clear your head every night. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is practice breathing through your nose only. So people who sleep really well are like toddlers, as I say, little young kids. They always sleep really, really well. They breathe through their nose only. That's the second step. The third step is to focus on how slowly and deeply you can breathe. And that's all you think about. Okay, now for the people out there who sleep like very soundly, and if you're in my house or in an audience that I was speaking to and I could see all of you, I would ask how many of you sleep like toddlers or small kids. That is, put your head on the pillow and go bang, straight off to sleep. And there will be always in every group a fairly significant number of people who do that. And so I always ask them, tell me what is your secret? And they always say that they think of nothing, which is actually what these 2 points are about. So the people who sleep soundly are the people who clear their minds, and they only think about their slowness and depth of breath. And they're also really good that if a thought comes into their mind, they can recognize it, block it, and usher it out and go back to thinking about that other step. And sometimes people are really good at going to sleep quickly, but they wake up early in the morning and then struggle to get back to sleep. And if that's the case, what you really need to do is to just simply repeat steps 2, 3, and 4. Please understand that the ritual of sleeping is one of the most important leadership skills that you can have, because it's the body's most valuable way of recovering, and it is such an important component for the authentic leader in today's business world. The next step is what we call our high-performance emotional rituals, and quite frankly, this is probably the most important slide for every human being to understand. And what I'm going to say to you on this is that really your emotional system has two major functions. And you can see with the diagram on the right that every one of us has our emotions, and the great news is that every one of us has an authentic emotional system which totally talks just to us. And it's that authenticity and individuality that gives us the feedback and the importance that this system has and the role it has to play in our lives. So if I was to say to you, what are the two major functions of our emotional system, it's really simple. One of them on the right-hand side with the happy face is that our emotions reward us. So it's rewards. And the opposite to rewards in my world is warns, W-A-R-N-S. So rewards on one hand makes me happy, makes me feel good, and on the opposite side of the coin it's warns. Now, of those two emotions, the ones that are the interferences, of course, are always the reward component here. The reward is not the interference. That's the part that's good. You never want to change that. But the interference is over here in the warning space. So what I like to teach people how to do is to become really good at knowing when they're in a good emotional space and pay attention to what that is. And then when they're moved into a warning space, they'll experience that as an interference. And so the skill is to be able to recognize, where did that interference come from, and what do I need to do to change it? Because the fundamental role of your emotional system is to keep you happy and healthy. And if you listen to this part, it will work for you. If you entertain and maintain the warning emotions when they happen, you're going to get significant interference on a day-to-day basis, and it will continually increase. And that's not what you want. That's not healthy at all. Just remember that your emotional system is unique to you, and nobody else will get the same emotional reactions to situations that you do. Please listen to it. And if you're not good at this, spend some time in the mindfulness state, in that physical ritual component, to teach yourself to become aware of what emotions you're feeling at the moment. And if I was right alongside you, I should be able to tap you on your shoulder and say, hey, what are you feeling at the moment? And you should be able to say to me, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, I'm feeling something else. And really know that's exactly what you're feeling, because then I can be comfortable that you are tuned into your emotional system and you've got an understanding of its power and the authentic messages it's giving you. And we'll talk about the interferences a little later. What are your high-performance behavioural rituals? Well, this is pretty simple, actually. This is the target here. So your objective is to hit the arrow right in the middle every time. So these are the sort of things we look at here. The first one's a leadership. Well, this is probably the most authentic concept of leadership that you can have, and I came up with this model to explain to people how leadership actually works. And I would contend to every authentic leader in the audience that the first thing that they must be able to do effectively is they must be able to have a vision. It's absolutely essential. And from your vision for yourself and for your team or your business, you must be able to then lock in some values for that vision. And I would suggest that you have 3 values for your business vision, or even your personal vision, and 3 only, so you can focus on it. Very, very important. The next bit is what we call the behaviours. So the first thing we create as a leader is our vision for the team, our business and ourselves. The second thing we do is we identify what are the values that we're going to use to drive that. The third thing that we do is we then decide what are the behaviours that I want the rest of the team or the team and myself and the business to start to demonstrate, which is in this level here. And these behaviours need to be very specific. An example might be if I have a value of honesty, one of the behaviours might be that I commit to speaking openly and honestly with whomever, wherever and whenever appropriate and in a respectful way, which simply means that I will commit to having honest conversations, which makes me a very authentic individual. Very, very important. So that's how specific you want the behaviours to be. That will then drive a positive culture, and whatever outcome you have from that will be positive. So if you've got a positive culture, you'll get a positive outcome. If you've got a negative culture, which means all of these levels here are flawed, or as a leader you're not acting authentically in this space. So you might have a good vision, you might have great values, you might have good behaviours, but you're not practicing any of them, then the culture will be poor and the outcomes become really scattered and inefficient, unprofitable and unproductive. The concept here is about learning to lead yourself first and then others. And any of you who want to be authentic in this leadership space must know how to do that. If you can't lead yourself authentically, I'm going to be very brutal here, you have no right to lead others, because they expect you to come into the space being authentic and being a genuine version of a leader that they should and could want to follow. And they're very, very astute at being able to pick up at what you do well and what you don't do well. And leaders are put up on a platform where people expect them to be high-level performers. So yeah, that comes with the territory, and if you don't appreciate that, then you won't appreciate the fact that people look at you critically every time you open your mouth, every time you appear in front of them. They are looking for any sign that you're not the authentic version of who you say you are. So be very, very clear that it's a massively important commitment to make to be a leader. Please lead self first. And finally, we have the spiritual rituals. Now, this is quite simple. I'm going to break it down into a simple formula here. I call it W3 How. And the simple part of this is, I'll just take that back out, that last one. Okay, so the W3 is, there are three W's here. The first one is, who am I? That's the first W question. The second W question is, what am I capable of? You know, what do I see for myself? What are my plans for the future, and who do I plan to bring along with me? The third W here is, where am I going? So what is my vision for myself in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years? What's the vision for my business in the next 1 year, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years? And then the final part of that is, how do I get there? So the reason I use this little icon with a heart with wings is because this is a very authentic symbol. And you'll be authentic if you can answer these particular questions. You do this best by taking some time every day to reflect on your performance and what you've achieved and how closely you've worked towards your vision. That's really what makes you authentic and your business authentic. And you know, being authentic in business and in life also draws the right sort of people into your world. So if you have a strong vision, if you have strong values, if you have a suite of behaviours that people look at and admire, they'll want to be a part of that. They want to know how you do it. They want to learn that themselves. They want to be peaceful. They want to be purposeful, and they want to be powerful. And that's how you'll get them there. But you must be able to practice these things yourself first. So finally, what would be the current barriers to your success at the moment? The questions are, where is the pain and interference in your business and life at the moment? And the simplest way you can do that is just to make a list. Now get a piece of paper, use your tablet or your smartphone, and just put down, what am I enjoying in life at the moment? Bang, 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 bang. And then also identify where is the pain or the interference in my life and also in my business. And be very specific. Put everything down that you're not really happy with at this point in time. And once you've got those things written down, what you then have to do is work out what's your strategy to confront it and resolve it. And this is where my work is specialist. So what I do with people is I sit with them and I work out, first and foremost with them, what is holding them back, what is blocking their success in their work, in their personal life and in their business life, and then we work out strategies together to ensure that those interferences are dealt with, and we then move to a higher level of authenticity with every appointment that we have, and their businesses and the people who work in their businesses start to appreciate that because they start to see a more authentic individual in the space. Pretty simple, really. It's courageous, though, to do this, because often when you're looking at interferences, you have to get in touch with what are problems in your life and where are the problems in your business, and that requires you to be very, very honest with yourself and with others. So let's recap here. First of all, you've got the performance model, which simply says performance equals potential minus interference. Second of all, we spoke about the power of systems, and there's two types of systems, those that work, those that don't. So whatever systems you have which make you feel good emotionally, they're good systems. Whatever systems you have that give your business an edge, profitability, that has integrity around it, they will be good business models. The things that in your life and your business that don't give you the outcomes that you're looking for or make you feel less powerful and less authentic, they're the sorts of systems you should be looking to change and review. Make sure as an authentic leader you are a high performer physically yourself, absolutely crucial. Make sure that you've got the right emotional systems or emotional rituals so that you know how to pick how you're feeling when you're in a particular mood state and what you need to do to get around that. Make sure that you are understanding your behaviours and that you know where your vision is, what your value proposition is, what behaviours you bring to the business or to the workplace or to your life, so that you develop and generate the right culture. It takes me, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes to walk into any business when I'm meeting with the leader of that business to be able to get a sense of what the culture is like in that business. And that tells me an enormous amount about the authenticity of the person in either a very good way or a negative way. Finally, step 6 is let's look at your spiritual rituals. Know who you are, what you're capable of, where you're going, and how you're going to get there, which is absolutely crucial. And bring other people on that journey because they deserve to be on it if it's a good one. And the final thing is have the courage to look at the current barriers to your success and do something about them. And if you don't know where to look, then you need some assistance to get those barriers out in the open and a strategy to clear the way so that you can be the most authentic individual and increase your level of impact, influence and income with everybody you meet. So thank you very, very much, everybody, for your time this evening. I'll go back to that. And it's been a pleasure. And please make use of the main to become an authentic leader. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Richard, for a very interesting presentation. We struggled in the beginning to connect, but I was glad that we got connected. Folks, we are now open for the question and answers. So if you have any questions, you can either raise your hand or you can put it in the question box, and I'll be happy to read your questions on your behalf to him. Let me go to the first caller. We have a caller who's raised his hand. Let's see. We have Ayman Bagiz. Brother Ayman Bagiz, could you hear us? Could you introduce yourself and ask a question? Ayman Bagiz, can you hear us? I believe we're having technical issues. So let me move to a question box. There's one question already there from Brother Imad Matar. If your weight is 90 kilogram, the result is 18. 18 of what? Cup or bottles, etc.
Okay, so it's if it's 90 kilos, the result, if it's multiplied by 0.02, it wouldn't be 18, it would be 1.8. So that would be 1.8 litres of water a day.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Ali?
I guess, Imad, if you have any supplementary questions, you can feel free to ask. Okay. There's one clarity is required from Harminder. It's asking, it's 1.8 kg and not 18 kilograms, is it?
Yeah, it's your weight in kilograms multiplied by 0.2, and what that gives you is litres of fluid. So if I'm 90 kilos and I multiply by 0.02, what I'll get is 1.8, and that's 1.8 litres of water a day.
Okay, we have another caller, a regular caller. We have Dr. Muhammad Farid. Dr. Muhammad, could you please ask the question?
Yeah, thank you, Richard, for such a great presentation. And it's, in fact, you touched a lot on fitness, and it's really a very thought-provoking session I had. I just thought in the comment on the behavior rituals when we had that leadership model where especially in the today's businesses and organizations, it's a lot of rewards and awards for these high performers in the employees in that organizations. Whereas unfortunately that not the average performers or low-lying performers are not being appreciated as much as the high performers. The organizations are more focused on these value drivers, as well as, that creates some kind of a culture also that the high performers are always been appreciated, rewarded, etc., and they're always in the limelight. So how can we have that kind of culture where we can have the mentoring and the coaching concepts from these high performers, so that they can also, the colleagues who are average performers or the below average performers can also be be coached and mentored. So it's a bit of a big question, but I know there won't be a quick fix answer, but Richard, with your experience, I'm sure you can give me a good insight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's an excellent question, and the simple answer to it is that if that's the existing culture in the business, what I would encourage is that there needs to be some dialogue and insight to the leadership team or to the senior decision makers in the business, so that they're aware of this, and that a mentoring program around leadership and authenticity and high-level performance, which is aligned to the vision and the values of the organisation, is put in place. And quite simply, if the vision and the values of the organisation is powerful enough, they should have something in there that will encourage succession of talent, so that the organisation will always have a pool of high-level performers and a culture of encouraging other people to step up and come forward. I think if an organisation is too focused on the high-level performers to the detriment of the rest of the organisation, then I think the culture becomes too divided. So I think that's really about making sure that whatever vision that business has, that it's broad enough and wide enough to be able to bring everybody on the journey and give everybody feedback about how well they're going in either direction. Either, you know, you're doing this really well, or this needs to change, and I'll show you how I think you could do this better. It's certainly not an easy, quick fix, so I acknowledge that. It has a lot to do with the leaders of the business.
Thanks, Ali, for the opportunity, and thanks, Richard. Best wishes to you.
Thank you very much.
Same to you.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed, for usual for your regular interesting questions. Folks, any other questions? You can put it in the question box, or we can always you can always raise your hand to speak to Richard as well. Well, it looks like we have reached towards the conclusion. So, Richard, any concluding remarks that you would like to give before we dismiss out?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to the community for the opportunity, and please recognise that the journey of authenticity around your own leadership is a day-to-day thing. It does begin with you, and it actually ends with you, and your authenticity in leading yourself, in my mind and in my world, gives me an indication of how valuable you could be to the organisation, because if you can do that with yourself, you will have the discipline and the commitment to see an organisation through difficult times and be the sort of person who I could depend on to see that journey through. So thank you very much, Ali.
Well, thank you very much. I really want to thank you on behalf of the Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship, Mile, for giving us your time and for this interesting presentation. My apologies once again for starting a little late. We had encountered little technical issues in the beginning, but I was glad that we got over it. So thank you very much once again, Richard, and thank you all of those who participated in this webinar. We are recording it. The recorded version will be uploaded on community.mile.org in the next couple of days. So please stay tuned to webinar.mile.org for our upcoming webinars and for accessing our archive section as well. With that note, I would like to end it, conclude it, so you all will be dismissed out. Thank you very much. You all have a good day, good afternoon, good evening, wherever.
Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship, MILE.